Why are Man United so bad at the moment, boys? What is the problem at the club? Is it a lack of quality players? Is it the manager and his tactics? Or have the board let him down by not helping him buy the right people? Why are Man United so bad right now?
The one thing we're not going to say, is it's the board not buying the right players. Because as you said, Terry, he's been in your club for just over 12 months. He's had, what was it, 9 signings? 9 signings. If you ask 9, yeah. If you ask me, 9 signings is more than adequate amount to make an impact on your team and where you can create your identity and have a large impact on, because that's 9 players. There's only 11 on the football pitch, and you're not always going to sign starters, but it gives you enough players to start to implement it on your squad. For me, Ten Hag's not done enough over the past year to show the improvements in your team, and some of the things that were lacking a year ago and before Ten Hag was there is starting to show again that these players still have the same problems. I know you can say it's not always Ten Hag. These are going to be some of the same players that were there before. That's fine. But with the players that are there and the players that he has brought in, I don't think there's been enough for him to improve. And it's only 2 games into the season, so you can't judge it too much, especially with the new players and that he's brought in with those. But especially with Mason Mount, it's not looking good.
And I think you can say that he did enough last season because obviously it wasn't really his team. They won a cup, they got the Champions League qualification. It's more about just using what he had. I think the problem is this season, there's no progression from the 2 games that we've seen. I know it's only 2 games, but the Wolves game, for instance, Wolves are a relegation fodder, let's be honest. And Man United got overrun in that game, especially in midfield. They made Casemiro look very average, but that's because he's doing a 3-man job by himself. And it looks like he didn't learn from his mistakes into the second game, where in the second half, Spurs actually annihilated them. So on the pitch, I don't think Ten Hag's got it tactically right because the players don't look like they know what they're doing. There's no particular style of play. I can't figure out what they're trying to achieve. And they're struggling to score goals as well. I know Highland's come back, whatever, but no one is contributing in the attacking half of on the pitch. It's all a bit wishy-washy. You know, there's no leaders on the pitch. I mean, the Bruno Fernandes captaincy thing, that's another story. But the Mason Mount sign, like you alluded to, what does he actually bring to the team? He looks lost. You know, Maguire, we don't know what's happening there. You need another defender. You brought Onana in to change your side of play to be more front-footed, and that's all good and well. But if you haven't got the rest of the players following suit, it's a disaster.
It's not going to work, bro.
Gonna keep it consistent like last year. Liverpool, when I have 1 player, 2 players not performing well, I'm gonna call out the player. When I have more than half the team not performing up to the standards that we saw, that we know they can perform at, even Luke Shaw last year was good. Now it starts the season. I'm only analyzing 2 games. He doesn't look the same pace. Doesn't look great. Casemiro left by himself, but not performing great. Bruno Fernandes, I don't think Bruno Fernandes is performing the same level. Even Anthony, I think he's worse this year than even last year. I'm gonna point to the manager. Listen, I played football. I know when you have 5-6 players not performing to the level, I'm gonna point to the tactics, where they are on the pitch, the way they're set up, and maybe other things, maybe fitness before the season. Maybe the way they eat, stuff like that. But I'm going to point to the managerial crew, including the manager. If you have too many players not performing, it's not only one. Even Rashford looks like lost on the pitch.
I think a few things go hand in hand. I think we can all see that the midfield is a shambles. And some of that is down to Ten Hag buying Mason Mount. But some of it's on the board because the way they've acted in the market since he's arrived, everything's slow. So I don't know. Either he bought Mount with an intention of still bringing in someone like Amrabat, which would give the midfield the balance it needs, or he has just ballsed it up buying Mount and not really knowing Mount's profile or how to use him. Because the difficulty is, if an Amrabat does come in, then one of Bruno or Mount, which presumably would be Mount, drops to the bench. So then you've spent your big 60 million up front at the start of the window on a player that gets benched. But the worrying thing is I saw a stat today that was like, and I know the media have messed around with some stats to make it look like United's midfield's worse than it is, but it was like United have conceded the most number of shots from inside their own box this season in the entire league, and conceded the most number of touches inside their own box in the Premier League this season. And that is very, very worrying, because that means it is not difficult to get to United's box, and you're going to lose a lot of games if that's the case.
Yeah. I think Ten Hag definitely takes a lot of the blame right now, because the players that he's brought in, like Mason, for example, if you've been watching Mason the whole time he's been in the league, you would know that this guy doesn't work in the pivot. You know what I'm saying? He's not a centre mid. Mason needs to be further up the pitch, crashing into the box, getting onto the end of things, and maybe just, being a little bit more creative. That's one thing that I said about Mason. He needs to coach some creativity into him because he hasn't really got it in abundance. Like I said before, he's a diluted version of Bruno. Now you've got him playing, next to Casemiro. It just doesn't work in that position. Ten Hag, it seems like he lacks a bit of flexibility when it comes to the in-game management. He seems very stubborn as well. I was surprised that he started that same midfield. Me and George said before the game, when we previewed the game, we said, listen, if you come out of that same midfield again, Tottenham are going to pop you and they're going to win the game. And we both predicted 2-1 Tottenham. And United didn't even score. I know they had a good first half. They had a few chances. They've got problems in front of goal. But tactically, it's just not looking great right now. Something needs to change in that midfield. And then when you talk about the board, Amrabat, what's going on with that? I'm hearing that they're waiting for players to leave before they bring in someone else. It's pure negligence right now. But end of the day, if you know how your owners are, you have to go about it the right way with the money that you've been given. You can't go and buy players that aren't going to fit the style of play you're trying to play. You can't be misprofiling players when you know that the owners you've got aren't going to be like a Todd Bowley and just give you more money. Do you know what I mean? He's wasted a lot of that money on Mason Mount. And Rory, it's a bit of a sticky one. He can't.
Sorry, how many signings that you mentioned? How many of them have actually worked that they bought under the Ten Hag?
Probably only. I would probably say what's his name? Martinez.
Lisandro.
And Onana is going to work. Let's be real. And right now he's playing.
Casemiro worked, guys.
Hang on. So I would say this: Eriksen as a free transfer definitely worked last year. He helped improve our midfield. Barring Arsenal and City fans, helped get us above all your football clubs last year and win a trophy. Casemiro definitely worked. 110% he worked.
It worked last season.
Yeah, but would you say that was his signing? It was our club signing, Terry, though. Casemiro.
Again, this is the way I look at it. It depends how you want to weigh it up. So you're saying it's not. Are we going to say now the good signings are not his?
No.
Nah, what I'm saying is last season, obviously you went up against Brentford, you lost that game, and then Ten Hag went away from De Jong and got Casemiro.
No,
what I'm asking is, do you think it was his signing or the club?
Hang on, you're wrong though. We were already heavily linked to Casemiro before that game. The deal was almost pretty much done before that game. So it wasn't. We lost to Brentford. Let's find somebody else. Casemiro. He wanted Frankie De Jong absolutely, and the club couldn't get him his number one target. So I think Casemiro is a player our manager wanted, but he wasn't the number one target. Frankie De Jong was, as an example. But Eriksen definitely worked. Casemiro has definitely worked. Lisandro Martinez definitely worked. They were 3 of our 4 marquee signings last year. Anthony, we know, has been absolutely horrendous, and so far he hasn't translated how good and effective he was for Ajax over into this Man United team. It's just, and we've seen that happen with the Eredivisie before. Some players have come in and done well. Some have come in and been absolutely tosh. You look at this season so far. He's only signed 3 players: Onana, Mount, and Højlund. You can't judge. But we signed Malacia. Malacia was a £10 million youngster. I'm not saying he hasn't been world class, but for a player of his age and the amount of money we spent on him, I think he's been okay. Like, nobody believed he was coming in to be the new left back. We all believed he was coming in to be a backup player, and he's done a good job at that. He's had a couple of bad games and some really good ones. So I wouldn't look at him as a flop or sensational. Does that make sense? This season's signings, Onana's played 2 games and nothing is done wrong in those games, barring give away a penalty that weren't one, which didn't happen. So it is what it is. Mount's been awful, I'll give you that. But Rasmus Højlund, the other signing, he hasn't kicked a ball yet. So when you actually break it down, we've made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've made 8 permanent signings, one of which hasn't kicked a ball, and the other 2 have only had 2 games. So you're literally looking at 5 players so far. So I wouldn't look at it and go, all of these signings have been awful. I understand that some of the blame is on the manager. There's no doubt. The way we've started this season tactically has been absolutely poor. But as a United fan, we've done this 4 times on the bounce now, and you guys either don't remember it, or as a non-United fans, you're not looking at it. But this happened to LVG and it happened to Jose, 100%. I want to get rid of certain players. I just don't want them in the dressing room. They're not good enough, and they're still here. They're still here. Ten Hag didn't reject the bid that came in for McTominay. Ten Hag didn't help the deal mess up with Maguire. He isn't the one who's allowed the deal for Henderson to fall apart. None of that is on the manager. He says, yes, I want them gone, but he doesn't deal with the buying and the selling as in the direct action. So for me, this is where it becomes a joint situation as well for me, where you have to look at both sides. And this has happened to our managers since Sir Alex Ferguson retired. They don't always get their number one targets for one reason or another. and we struggle to get rid of the dead wood at our football club.
I feel like that's every club though, Terry. And I feel like we can't let Man United have that excuse because Ten Hag's only been there for a year. Yeah, he's not.
Hang on a minute. What do you mean, let Man United? So are you telling me? Hang on, George. So you are telling me that you don't have a go at your board for not getting rid of players like Eric Dyer?
I'm not saying you don't have a go at your board, but I'm not going to sit here and lie the accountability on the board and keep saying, oh, the board, this, stuff. We're talking about the manager and where we lay the blame. And quite frankly, the manager's been there for a year. He's made 9 signings. And the fact that he's not been able to transform the team. Yes, last season was good. It was a good season. Bear in mind that quite a lot of the other teams that you expect to be good fell off. This season, I do feel like you might get a bit exposed in the fact that Man United aren't going to be as good as they looked last season, and you're not going to be progressing the way that you thought you was. And right now, this season has shown that. It's shown that Casemiro and we're talking about Casemiro.
Sorry to interject, but you're talking about 8-9 signings, but there's eight permanent signings, and 3 have just come in. One of them hasn't kicked the ball yet. So again, that's disingenuous to actually what's going on.
I was going to say about Casemiro too.
But when you turn around and say that we can't hold the board accountable, we have to look at the manager. At the end of last season, when you were in tears over your club season, you turned around and said it's on our board. It's on our board again. They've let another manager down. So why are you allowed to blame your board? But as soon as I question not all of it on my board, some of it on my board, you say, no, it has to all be on Eric Ten Hag. Why can you blame Enoch and your board and Daniel Levy?
I wasn't one of those fans. I've never been one of those fans.
You definitely had a go at your board at the end of last season.
I would have definitely. Look, we're all allowed to hold our board accountable to some extent, but with regards to the football, I've always said our downfall last season was the fact that Conte couldn't get enough out of the players. He couldn't keep the players going. It's on Conte. Naturally, the tactics fell apart. The team fell apart because you saw this team go good at one point, and if it falls apart, that's on Conte. It's not on the board. And this season, what I'm looking to see is that, yeah, like everyone else mentioned, this midfield, Man United midfield has been one of the most dribble past midfields. Casemiro has looked exposed.
It's been awful.
He's been exposed.
This is the thing, Terry. No one forced Ten Hag to go and buy Mason Mount. Like I said on Never Far the other day.
Hang on, bro. I want to stop it because it annoys me. I'm not saying that. But I've held him accountable for that signing, and I've agreed with that element. So we don't need to debate that. That's happened. That's done. What I'm saying is me turning around and also stating that there's deadwood at the club that we've not been able to get rid of. If I agree with. So Chelsea this summer, you've got rid of a lot of your deadwood, right? If they were all still there and in the changing room, would you be holding Poch accountable for that?
No. It's like I said, it definitely goes hand in hand. They have to take accountability. Yeah.
So then for me, and I am rattled about it, then there is no debate here. I can hold both accountable for us struggling at the start of the season. Why is it that only Ten Hag or Man United fans can't hold their board accountable, but every other fan base can? I don't understand. No one can answer that question for me.
No, it's because you've said the players that you want to get out, the likes of McTominay, the likes of Maguire. Maguire refused to leave. He couldn't agree terms. And that you can't put that on the board. No,
that's wrong. That's wrong. He didn't. He agreed terms with West Ham. We wouldn't pay him off the rest of his contract. £7 million. The board said no to it. So the board stopped that from happening.
So, but if he really wanted to leave the club, he would have. And as you said, he's getting paid a lot of money at Manchester
Yes, exactly. United. And so he's on 220 grand a week at our club. West Ham offered him about 100 grand, and he's happy to go there for that. But he wanted the rest of his contract paid up by the club, and the board said no. The board stopped the deal happening.
And that contract that he's on was nothing to do with Ten Hag in the first place.
Exactly. So Ten Hag is being held back, and then the board are then not giving Ten Hag money to buy additional players that he needs because they can't get rid of those players. So Ten Hag's transfers are being held up because of legacy issues at the club. And I understand the tactics, the Mason Mount stuff. I completely blame that on the manager. But to tell Man United fans that we can't complain about our board helping to create problems is crazy to me because you would all moan about that at your club. So why can't we?